Welcome to The Fully Mindful, where we explore what it means to live with intention, creativity, authenticity, and connection. I'm your host, Melissa Chareau, mindfulness and breathwork facilitator, neurodivergent lawyer and coach, and fellow human navigating this wild and beautiful ride we call life. On this podcast, we dive deep with interviews featuring inspiring guests, share solo mini episodes packed with guided mindfulness practices to help you center and thrive, and mix things up with tangents and sidebars, where my friend and fellow podcaster Debbie Harrell from the New World Normal joins me for some real, random, and meaningful conversations. So if you're ready to pause, reflect, and expand, you're in the right place. Let's get fully mindful. Hello, everybody. This is Melissa with The Fully Mindful, and I have the absolute pleasure to be here with Katie Joy Duke. She has so much to say. What can I say about her that I don't want to just let her say? But she is a mom, she's a wife, she's an author, she's an advocate, she's an amazing all-around person. She wrote a book. I wish I could just show everybody. It's called Still Breathing, My Journey with Love, Loss, and Reinvention. And it's a memoir. And we were just talking before starting our recording tonight that when I went to Katie's book launch, I had to turn my camera off because I was crying. So we're going to get into it, people, is what I'm going to say, because what Katie and her family has been through is monumentally huge, and how she's come around through it, felt through it, lived through it is something to witness and to learn from. So Katie, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Melissa. That was a really sweet, heartfelt, organic intro. I appreciate it.
Yeah. And so for folks out there who don't know you, I mentioned you wrote a book called Still Breathing. And it just came out, I think, a few months ago?
Yeah, I published the ebook on May the 4th. So May the 4th be with me. And relevant to that, actually, given that we are both lawyers, is that I resigned from my job after my daughter died on May the 4th of 2016. I wouldn't have realized that or remembered it, but Facebook sent me a memory this year. And sometimes the memories come a couple days after the thing actually happens. Right. And so it sent me this memory, and I had just published my book. So I was kind of on cloud nine. And then I got this memory and I was like, oh my gosh, I also left my job on May 4th. Like I had no idea of that synchronicity, and it's very powerful, as you know, because you've read the book, but leaving my job was one of those incredibly difficult decisions. But I did it to save my life, because I just couldn't keep working or practicing law at that point. And turns out I haven't gone back to practice law. So
yes, well, and we'll talk more about that. And I mean, your book is such a beautiful, heart-wrenching and beautiful memoir of you and your family's experience with giving birth to your daughter, who was born stillborn.
Mm-hmm.
And, the book isn't just about that. It's also about the love that you have with your husband and how that came to be, and the love that you had for your beautiful daughter who passed.
Yeah.
And then the love that you have for your daughter, Moxie, who is alive, and your family and your father and your family. It's just such a beautiful memoir. I don't want to give it all away, because I think people really need to read this book. But tell us how you came to the decision to write. I mean, it's very revealing. You don't shy away from any of the difficult feelings, and you lay it all out there. And so what made you decide, or what compelled you is maybe the better word.
So many things compelled me to write the story. I think one of the strongest ones was the need to remember, and the need to remember that Poppy was real. and that that my loss was real, and that the sadness and the grief that I was experiencing, and the loss of identity, and the the anxiety, I mean, panic, I mean, all those feelings were based on something, and something was the death of my very real daughter, who was stillborn at full term. And so it started as this need to remember, and it started really in the form of a journal entry that I wrote the night that we came home from the hospital, which is there in the memoir itself. And then it was inspired also, the belief that it could be a book, that I actually had a story to tell, was inspired by a number of things. One, a memoir written by another woman who had gone through a similar loss. And if anyone reads her book, which I reference in my introduction, it's very different than mine, but in the ways that we are similar, it's that it's incredibly lyrical and poetic, and in some ways cinematic, and very like visual, in a way that like I was pulled into her world, and she gave me permission to be there with her. And that when I read that story, not having any idea that stillbirth was so prevalent, and also that someone had written about it. And I have to tell you, Melissa, it was Althea Cullen who gave me that book. And Althea is your friend.
Right.
She is my friend, and she is our connection. So that's such a beautiful thing. I love that came up. But her, and that author's name is Elizabeth McCracken. So when Elizabeth basically gave me permission to think that I had a story to tell, and then also I think also Brene Brown's teachings were really relevant for me. At the time, and it was 2016 when I was first introduced to Brene Brown, and she was really like, things were really getting big for her. She'd done some TED Talks at that point. She'd written a handful of books. And so I was exposed to her teachings, and her work really helped me step into the belief and the mindset that my story did matter, and that to be empowered by my loss, I got to control the narrative in a way. There were so many things I had absolutely no control over, but what I did have control over was the belief that my story mattered, and that if I continued to see it through, someday it would turn into something meaningful. And then just on the note of us both also being coaches, although I was not a coach at the time, and I had really no concept of the coaching industry or that I had never even been in individual therapy, much less coaching, when Poppy died. But I made a commitment, and I was, I think, 4 months into my loss when I also posted on Facebook that I was going to write a memoir. Yeah. I just put it out there. I took this online writing memoir class. It was through the library. It was free. But it just got me going. It got me thinking about themes and tone and all this stuff. And it was really, at the time, it was really stimulating for me, because I hadn't yet gone back to work as a lawyer, but that writer part in me was really being stimulated. Like, oh, I jive with this. Like, I want to think about these themes. I studied English literature in college. So it was just like going back in a way to something that I had kind of let go of, especially creative writing. Because as lawyers,
but we don't do that.
No. You are not allowed to be creative.
To.
No, you're not. It's so cut and dry. It's like, issue, rule, analysis, conclusion. And like, you got to stick to it, and you got to find the case law and be very, very focused. And with creative writing, you get to do whatever the heck you want. And especially in my case, like, one of my favorite things is like, you can break the rules if you know what the rules are. So it's funny because, like, as a writer, like, as long as you know what the rules are, then you can creatively break them. With law, you really shouldn't be breaking the rules at all. So
right, like pretty much never. Yeah, no.
Pretty much never. Don't break the rules. Yeah, don't be a jerk.
I joke with my fellow lawyer friends that I'm going to have a T-shirt that says "Just follow the law."
Yes.
Because people are like, well, "What's your legal advice?" Just follow.
Except hashtag when the law sucks.
Right.
So
and then we'll talk.
Yeah. This isn't a political podcast, so we won't get into it.
Well, and I mean, just as an aside, your background when you were a practicing lawyer was in social justice,
Yes.
and you practiced also as a disability lawyer and advocated on behalf of people who are disabled and needing benefits,
Yeah.
which is really super important work.
Thank
And
you.
I know you did not give that up easily.
Oh, it was really hard. Um, you know what's so interesting about it, Melissa, and you'll understand this too, is as an attorney, a professional, a lot of us, not all of us, but I had a lot of autonomy. I was completely, once a case was assigned to me, I didn't have to talk to my theory about anyone. I mean, if I needed help, if there was something super convoluted and I was really curious about a certain case, of course I had, mentors and advisors that would help. But for the most part, like I ran the show. I was in charge.
Mm-hmm.
And I always did A+ work.
Yeah.
That's who I am. And so when I went back to work and I tried working, people, first of all, my clients knew no, they didn't know any different. They didn't know a different Katie because, they didn't know me before my loss. So all those cases had been dealt with someone else while I was on maternity leave. But so all these new clients, they didn't know any different. And so they didn't know that the person on the other end of the line was crushed and was dealing with such a traumatic loss. But very quickly I realized how different I had become basically overnight. Like I used to have this like shield of professionality, and like I knew what my responsibilities were. I knew what my purpose was, to go in and do my best to win while simultaneously honoring the person in front of me, and to fight like hell when I needed to, and all that. Like I knew what the rules were, and like all boundaries were gone after Poppy died. I had no ability to isolate or separate myself from these other people's trauma because I was sitting in the middle of my own. And that was exhausting, to say the least. And I found myself on the phone with my clients having very heartfelt conversations that I think probably in the grand scheme of things, they were like, this woman is amazing, but also they weren't appropriate.
Right.
As a lawyer, like my job is not to be like, my baby just died. But I was on the phone with my clients being like, oh, I'm so sorry you're going through that. I'm actually going through something really hard too. And like that's just
Right.
not appropriate. It's not wrong. It's just not appropriate. And so, all that is to say that when I finally did decide to resign, there were several people, including a handful of judges, that told me that I was still doing a good job. But you're still doing a good job, Katie. And I thought, oh, thanks, but like I'm like barely C- right now. I am barely passing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that what I could offer to anyone who finds themselves in my shoes, not because you've gone through stillbirth, if you have, I'm so sorry, but any loss, any loss, anything that you're trying to navigate when your world has completely shaken up, is that like, if you don't want to just barely pass, if you don't want to just push through, if you are burnt out and your world has imploded on you, you don't have to keep doing what you did before. You can change. And I say all that understanding that finances come into play, and it's not like people can just walk out on their jobs and stop paying their mortgage and the car payments and stuff. Like that's all very important, but those conversations were had in my home between my husband and I mean, those were very tender, intimate, sort of scary conversations, to look at my husband, who I just married, who knew me as a woman who was making good money, showing up for work, doing my thing, contributing, to say, honey, I don't think I can do this anymore.
Right.
I don't, like, I've got savings, like I'll spend my savings, I can still contribute, but like I can't work right now.
Right. Well, and I think, I mean, that's it was interesting you used the phrase, running the show. And that's definitely what lawyers do, but I would guess quite a few other professions. And
Yeah.
when we're in our lives and things are going well and we can compartmentalize like nobody's business and we can just run the show and all is good, and then Holy Mother of God, something happens. And whether that's what you experienced, which you had the most spectacularly beautiful pregnancy that I've ever read about or known about. It's
It
like
was
this
so charmed.
gorgeous thing that like I was like, oh, mine did not look like that, you know. And I was like, this is so beautiful, but you know, I also know what's going to happen, so
Right,
I'm
right.
foreshadowing and all of that, and so, but all this beautiful stuff, and you know, and then this unbelievable tragedy happens, right? And it's very clear you're no longer running the effing show
Mm-mm.
at all. Like,
Not
I
at
don't know
all.
who is, but it's not you.
No.
Because this is not what you would have had happen. And there's, you know, a piece where you write in your memoir, and it was just, I mean, I'll just warn people, it's freaking excruciating to read. So I can't imagine what it was to experience. I mean, I can imagine
Mhm.
in some ways, but I have not experienced it. But I mean, you had to give birth to a daughter you knew was not alive.
Mhm.
Let's take a quick break.
Hey, everybody, this is Melissa with the Fully Mindful. It's the new year, and I bet you're feeling the need to unlock your full potential and embrace empowerment, or maybe something completely different. Well, I'm excited to offer a new program with one-on-one breathwork and coaching sessions. We'll embark on a truly transformative journey of self-discovery, combining conscious, connected breathwork and embodiment coaching, and more. So contact me, Melissa, at The Fully Mindful, for your transformative session today.
Yeah.
And your whole world shifts.
Yeah. It's interesting how much healing I have done through the writing process, and in particular through the editing process, because 2021 was really about finishing what I'd started. I was really like, you know what, calendar's getting cleared. I'm not taking on any new coaching clients. I completed with all my coaching clients. I'm not advertising. I mean, I definitely got people that reached out and said, hey, I heard you're a coach. Like, are you taking clients? And I'm like, let's talk. And I had a couple, you know, I always had a client, and that made me feel really good because I love coaching, but the main focus was writing the book. I spent every single free minute writing the book. And then when it came to, so like writing those stories, a lot of those stories finally got written. And, but then it was this editing process. And then as part of working with my publisher, I had to actually attest, there's a legal word for you, but I had to attest that I had read my manuscript out loud multiple times. Like towards the end, I think I had to read it like 3 times before I sent it to one editor. And then I had to read it 3 more times out loud before I sent it to another editor. And all of this was because our brain hears and reads differently. Like if I'm reading something out loud, I'm like, oh, that shouldn't be hat, that should be at. But like my brain would correct it if all I did was read it. I would forgive the error right in my brain. But I didn't want to have a book full of errors, aka recovering perfectionist. And neither did my editor, right? Neither did my publisher. My publisher wanted my book to be as damn near close to perfect as possible. So but there were those moments in my bedroom when I was like, my voice was sore from reading out loud, where I had to read these chapters out loud. And I had to, like, it's chapter 6. Chapter 6 is where I learn. And then chapter 7 is where she's born. And then chapter 8 is saying goodbye. And I know all this from memory. I'm not looking at it, you know, just like, and I had to read these things. I had to read these stories out loud. And there were times, Melissa, where on the subject of self-compassion and empathy, I found myself gasping, putting my hand on my heart and thinking, oh, this poor woman.
Yeah.
And then, like shaking my head and being like, Katie, this is you, honey. Like, this is you.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was extraordinary to have, like you're saying, actually almost now 7 years ago, have my baby, give birth vaginally to my child who I knew would be dead, hold her in my arms, spend that limited amount of time with her, but then to go back and remember as best as I could exactly what happened. And then again, to read it out loud and actually to get to a point objectively where I could read it, hear it, and be with it in a way that I'm like, gosh, that was hard. Like what, and to have compassion for
Right.
the person in the story. And then remember, oh my goodness, it's me. And I think now, especially for those in your audience, of course, who don't know me or at all, but like now that I am currently dealing with stage 4 metastatic breast cancer, and I'm 14 weeks into chemotherapy, and I have a mastectomy coming up in the fall, and I've got radiation, and I'm trying to remember and remind myself of all the tools
Right.
that I use to help me get through, now that I'm yet again, quite frankly, completely grieving. I mean, and I think you and I are friends on social media, so you've been able to see some of the things I've been posting this past couple of days. But last week, I hit a wall and I had a major breakdown, and it manifested in the form of physical pain in my body, and then it released itself in the form of spiritual pain. And someone who follows me, who I care deeply about, she's a grief coach and a healer. Her comment was just like, name it, it's grief, and let it be so. And I was just like, oh,
Right.
thank you for reminding me that this is grief. It's just grief. Like, it doesn't have to be anything more or anything less. It can just be grief. And I was like, oh, okay, I know grief. And then it was actually way less terrifying because it didn't have to be this overwhelming, spiraling, terrifying thing of like, am I going to get through this? Or how am I going to get through this? Or who is this making me? Or how am I changing? Like all that stuff that just like, all the anger and the rage and other things I've been going through that I finally talked about publicly, and all this stuff I've been holding in, and realizing like, oh yeah, talk about it, write about it. That is your story. This story matters. This new story matters.
It does. And
compassion.
I mean, I love that naming it, because, whatever we resist, there's
persists.
that persist.
It's true.
It's more than that, right? It doesn't just persist. That's like an understatement of the century, right? It metastasizes.
It festers. Yes.
It festers. It grows, and like you're swimming in this like pussy mess of awfulness, and you don't even know where to get purchase to try to climb out of it. And so,
absolutely.
But when you name it, you're like, I know you.
Yes.
I know you.
Yes. And
I've been here before, and I can ask for help, and I can have compassion. And I loved how you talked about when you were writing those passages in your book, similarly, like instinctively holding your heart, and giving yourself that compassion like you would a friend.
Yes.
And doing that now, with everything that you're experiencing now with cancer, and with all the other things that you talked about in your social media posts, which are all very significant.
They are.
So it's like, I curse on the show. I just was like, fuck.
I know it's been bad. I actually, speaking of Althea, she's one of the, maybe my husband knew what I'd recently gone through with this lawsuit that got dismissed. Althea knew, my brother, and I think my other best friend, Emma. And that's 4 people. And even they were just like, I mean, and then my poor husband who just, we just like, oh my God, how did this happen to me? And it's interesting because like, I don't wallow in self-pity. I definitely feel self-pity. So for anyone listening to this, like, I mean, just feel it, right? Like, I mean, if you're going to feel it, just feel it. And again, name it what it is. Like, oh, this feels like pity. Like I'm really feeling sorry for myself right now. And that's okay. Cause you can do that too, right? Like this notion that like, it's funny if we were, one of the things I hear probably more than anything is how strong I am. People love to reflect that to me. They also love to reflect like how radiant and sunshiny I am, which I love so much. And I love hearing that I'm strong and I appreciate that. But I tell you what, vulnerability is my superpower. So like my strength actually, I think comes from being authentic and like being really approachable. Like I feel, and I know that my work as a disability attorney helped make me this way. Absolutely 100%. I represented 1,008 people at their administrative hearings over the course of 5.5 years. So when you divide that over that many days, you're like, okay, you were in court like every other day. Cause it's true. I was, and some days it was actually that I had 6 hearings in one day and then I didn't for 5, but like I was there a lot. And every single one of those cases had a specific set of facts and details. And every single one of them had a real live, living, beautiful, source-filled person that was beaten down by so many things, by life, by circumstances, by education, by stigma, by homelessness, by drug abuse, by a mental health illness, the insurance systems that failed them, L&I that never came through, like it just went on and on. And so I learned how to be with all of that. And so I think that that's what makes me so approachable now, even though I'm not doing the work, is that like, I pretty much know how to hold space with everything. Like nothing is out of my boundary.
And it's such a huge skill because at least in this culture, we're taught not to. Like we run for the hills when we see someone who is hurting or angry, where most of us do, right? Yeah. And we just have no idea how to be present for grief or anger or self-pity or any of the things that we feel. We just we get really uncomfortable and we want to get in there. We want to run or we want to fix it. Yeah.
Correct. And that was actually one of the interesting things about being a lawyer and then now shifting to coaching, is because I never try to fix anything with coaching. Like that's not what it's about. And I think, you would attest too, but as a lawyer, a lot of times like the win, quote unquote, is a fix, right? Like, okay, look here, I was explaining this to someone recently, actually, that there were so many moments where I sat with my clients sort of in that 30 to 45 minute window before the hearing started, when we were running over last minute things. And I was like, coaching them and helping them understand what they were going to be going through once the hearing started, where there was this intuitive part of me that longed to be the life coach, that longed to be the mentor or the meditation teacher or the yogi or whatever, like to be to offer those spiritual. And I know in my own way I did, but there was always this like this resistance within me. It was like the oyster, that pearl, where it just like, it irritated me that it wasn't my job to do anything other than truly just go in for the win and try to quote unquote fix their problems. But I knew, even when they started getting that $1,200 check, and let's be real, $1,200 a month. Okay. Yay. You're on disability. Now you're going to get $16,000 a year. Congratulations. All your problems are solved. No. Oh, when you still have all that pain and you still have that crappy therapist on Medicaid and like, you know what I mean? It's just like, so but that was my job. Right. And so I was like, I knew that even if they were going to get disability benefits, it was never going to fix whatever ailed them, so to say. And for most people, whether they had physical problems or mental problems or what, there was almost always a spiritual unrest. And that was really hard because, and now as a coach, that's the kind of work that I get to do with my clients is that deeper underneath that layer, and then what's underneath that layer, and then what's underneath that layer. And then, truly helping them see the things that the stories they've started to believe that aren't true, or the things that served them for a really long time that don't anymore, to
Yeah.
move forward into a better life.
I mean, it's such interesting thing that you say, because it was making me remember some of the more significant moments. You know, you get these flashes through your career, and I remember sitting there with this one young woman who had been a victim of sexual abuse from a pastor in her
Oh,
church. So just like I mean, awful. And what happened in that moment, because she really didn't want to proceed with the case, and neither did her family, and all of that. But what I got to be there in a way that was really amazing was to be present for it. You know, like, I hear you, I see you, I understand this grief, this pain, this rage, and we're going to do whatever you want. Like, you are empowered in this moment, whatever you decide. And I had no idea, like you, like that was the part of the job that was like the best part,
yes.
right? The creating space, the holding space, the empowering of the person by just being present with them. I'm not going to fix the problem for them, because there was I could have never fixed that problem. How could I ever fix this poor young girl who had been sexually abused by somebody that she trusted?
Oh.
I'm never fixing that problem.
No. And that will be with her for the rest of her life. It will inform her relationships. It will inform her sense of value and worth. It will inform her relationship with God and the church. Like, it's going to have an impact. Right. And it's the thing, it's like the lawsuit or getting justice, quote unquote, like, you know, it's like, okay, like, don't get too many expectations. It's like,
right.
it's
right.
not,
And what are you going to have to go through in order to get this so-called justice?
Right. Like putting your name out there, being public, having this all like for anyone to smear your name or yeah. I mean, it's so sad. It's so sad that so many people, men and women, are being abused by others. I can speak from personal experience, but we won't go into that. Like, being abused, like people that manipulate and take advantage of other people when they're in need and when they trust you, and then they deny that. So that's that's a really big issue. And I actually see myself really addressing that in my next memoir, which I have already started writing, and I'm even starting in my, like, I'm writing it in my head. I'm writing it for real. I'm recording it. I'm doing all the things. I'm keeping track, because it's interesting. I've already written one book, and it's funny because it took me 6 years to write my first. It's definitely not going to take me 6 years to write my next, because I have so many tools. I already kind of know how to do it, how to structure it, sort of how to think big picture. I don't have any idea where this one's going to go either, because I'm writing it in the moment. And that to me is really, that is how I write best. Like, I process in the moment. And that was one of the things about writing Still Breathing that I think is why it's such a great book, is because I started writing immediately. And
these beautiful little letters to Poppy, your daughter. That's how it started.
I did. It's funny because my first working title for the book was Dear Poppy. And I have to just like, I almost have to just give myself a little hug, because the other day, although I have working title ideas for what it might ultimately look like this next memoir, the current title that I like, am kind of thinking about it in terms of like, who am I writing this to? The current title is Dear Cancer. Dear Cancer. Hello. Like,
hello.
Hi. Hello, mutated lump of cells that changed my DNA and started eating me alive. You know what I mean? It's just like, hello, like what, it's just like this next level of, it's interesting, because for me, with Poppy dying, she was my child, and my love with my husband, we created her, but she was something outside of me ultimately. Right. And now with this cancer, my first grief was deeply intimate, but this is, again, it's intimate. It's a very personal journey, and not everyone's is going to look the same. I've met a lot of breast cancer survivors who admit that they did it alone, that they got their diagnosis, they kept it quiet, they went and got their treatments, they didn't take time off, they didn't stop working, they just pushed through it. And it's so sweet because a lot of these people don't know me and they're like, don't do that. Don't do that. And I want to be like, oh, girl, don't you worry. I'm not pushing through anything. I was like, I mean, I have been, and that's why I hit that wall. I think it's finally catching up to me that like, hey, Katie, like this is real. Like chemo brain is real. And like chemo induced anemia is real. And like chemo insomnia is real, and all the digestive problems are real, and they are all really hitting you. So like, as strong as I am, I am not invincible, clearly. And it's like, oh, I can't push through. I don't plan on pushing through. I know. And it's funny, people are like, I learned how to ask for help when I got cancer. And I'm like, I learned how to ask for help when my baby died. And now that I have cancer, I am courageously digging in, and yet again, I am asking for help. It's just like, it's very humbling.
Well, and getting back to, what we were talking about earlier, you were used to, and we as a culture are used to running the show.
Yeah.
And even though you've learned how to ask for help and had to ask for help, and by the way, we're going to put a bunch of resources in the show notes about how to get help. But you've learned all that, and you're like, now you're learning it on this different journey.
I am.
Hey everybody, if you like this conversation and are looking to align your work and life with your purpose, or uncover your purpose in the first place, work with me. I coach people ready to uncover and appreciate their worth, make an impact, and find meaning and purpose in the work they do, whether that's personal or professional work. Get your mind right and make your plan for impact, and coach with me. Connect with me for 15 or 20 at the Calendly link in the show notes below, and talk about coaching with me.
And I was thinking about, just when you were talking about that, I opened your book, and it's in chapter 19, Seasons of Love. And it just opens with, and you say, the hardest part of moving forward while also carrying the memory of Poppy was discovering my purpose in the world again. And I love that. And I guess I'm thinking about you and this new journey that you're on, and wondering, what purpose, because we have so many purposes, right?
Yeah.
What purposes you're going to discover, or have discovered and will discover with what you're experiencing.
Thank
and
you.
I can't wait to hear that reflection.
Thank you. I was just thanking you for encouraging me to think very high level about that. Like, it's really important when we are stuck in the muck, which we talked about, the pus and this, it's just like literally like, ugh. And to know that there is elevation, there is altitude to all of this. And it's okay to take moments and think about that too, right? That there can be a higher purpose to all of this, and that I will grow. I am growing, it's an active process that's happening now. And that was what I wanted to say actually about, I think what I love about my writing process and style, especially sharing while it's happening, or at least writing in a way that you can read it as if you're like, wait, is she remembering this? Is this in the past tense? Because I feel like it's happening right now,
right.
is not just like, I never want to wrap anything up in a nice, pretty bow. I don't ever want to put anything out into the world. I mean, granted, I think my book is gorgeous, and it's a beautiful piece of literature that will live on in infamy and forever as a legacy for me and my family. But I want to make sure that I can honestly share with people all of the journey, not just, I mean, this is, I'll say, not just like the TED Talk.
Right.
I love TED. Ted, if you're listening, please, let's figure it out. But like, I said this today, actually, I got chemotherapy this morning, and I said this to one of the social workers who was talking about some counseling resources that I have access to, which I am absolutely excited about taking advantage of. And I said, I said, I can see myself in 10 years on the TED, not even, it doesn't have to be 10, it could be next, it doesn't matter. But like, I can see the future me on the TED stage, having figured out a way to package it and say it, and, the profundity of all of it and everything. But I think that you don't see, like, it's not likely that next month TED is going to call and say, hey, you want to put on a talk? Like, you want to stand on stage, bald, eyebrowless, eyelashless, weak, exhausted, whatever, and give a TED talk? Because I'm going to be like, I can't, that's too much. It's too overwhelming. Right. So you see the like finished product, like you see, and I'm so grateful for people like you who are willing to interview me, now, because wow, how cool will it be to have even this resource for myself to listen and go back and go, wow, I really have grown. Or like, ooh,
Yeah.
when Melissa asked me that question about chapter 19, and yes, my purpose, and how is it transforming? And it's funny because if someone were like, name your purpose, real fast, I would always, for me, it always comes back down to one word, which is love.
Mm.
That is at the foundation of everything. And do I love perfectly? No, I love imperfectly. And I am incredibly imperfect. And it's funny. And I want to offer this as to everyone listening, that like, I am a showstopper and a rock star and all these amazing things. And if you meet me at the farmer's market, we're going to have the best 20-minute conversation of your day. You know what I mean? You're just going to be like, wow, that lady, like, man, I'm so, and then I might come home later that day and scream at my husband.
Yeah. Turns out you're human.
Right. But I say that as a way to say to everyone, because I have to remind myself, because then sometimes I'm just like, am I really an awesome person? I mean, yeah, I was nice to the person at the farmer's market, but then I blew up at my husband. You know what I mean? Like, shouldn't I be better than that? Like that voice, right? The critic, like that perfectionist in me that like just doesn't let me be a human. Right. So I just want to remind everyone that is humanity. That is who we are. And then I ask for forgiveness. Right. And then we hug and kiss and make up, and like, you got to do that over and over and over again.
It's so true, because I was just talking with my husband about that the other day, that I will be like, wait, why am I suffering in whatever way? Why did I act this way? Or why?
Mm-hmm.
I am a meditation teacher. I am a life coach.
Yes.
I have 22 years of sobriety. I have, all of this.
Shouldn't I know better?
Shouldn't I know somehow better?
Right.
And it's like, God, it's so ridiculous that we put that we put that like mantle on ourselves that we're supposed to wear of like perfection.
Totally.
And we like, people do not reach nirvana. I mean, maybe there are some people who do, but like most of us don't. And so this is the journey, right? The journey. Love is an action, and it's not a perfect one. And so, it moves all over the place. So I love that you are a fellow human, because I need that reminder, and I think other people need that reminder. That
we do.
Despite what Instagram looks like.
Oh my gosh, I know. I said that to a lady the other day at the farmer's market. I was laughing because I had just that morning, I was washing dishes, and I was quietly resenting this fancy website that I had stumbled across of this other like transformational life coach. And I was thinking about the font that she uses and the color schemes. And I was like, gosh, her font is really fancy. Like, my font isn't that fancy, as I wash dishes. And then here's the thing. I think that where we can also give ourselves grace and a big old pat on the back is that at least then in that same moment while washing dishes, I noticed the critic. I noticed the judgmental saboteur that was there, that was trying to, I don't know what, drag me to like go back to the bedroom and skip the farmer's market altogether. I noticed it, right? And if just noticing and putting a little gap between the thought that is meaningless and that, my monkey mind it's gonna happen, right? Like putting a little space and then even having that moment to go, you're so silly, Katie. A font doesn't have anything to do with anything. And if you really like her font better, figure out what it is and go change your website. Like,
right.
But it's what's underneath the story that I'm telling myself about that woman's font being fancier. It's that she's a better coach than I am. And she doesn't have problems. And she's probably making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year as a coach. It's like,
she probably even says that she made her $100,000 in the first month just by her package. And
right, exactly. 6 weeks, just in 6 weeks. It's funny because yes, I would say, if someone wanted to work with me with 6 weeks, things will be different for you in 6 weeks because we will uncover things, but it will be the tippity tap of the iceberg. You will not be done.
Will not solve all of the world's problems and be 100% transformed into this perfect.
God, no. And that's the whole point of me just saying like, hey, I have the skills and the training and the education and the grief and the process. And I wrote the book and I got it done and I had the publisher and still I have to say this out loud to remind myself, because there's this very like, to-do list oriented my thinking, a strategic of like, I'm going to cross off hard times. Done. Check. I am trauma. Cross that off. Done. Had enough, and it's like, sorry, that's not how it works. Like right. You cannot, it's never done. In the same way that to-do lists are never done, to my own chagrin, but it's constant. We're always growing, we're always healing, and we've got to rest. We've got to rest. Like the whole burnout thing. Like, in some ways the pandemic finally like people are realizing like, oh, I couldn't keep that up. Like I couldn't.
They are and they aren't. So this is the fascinating thing. I have two things to say.
Yeah, tell me about that. I want to know.
So the one thing I noticed is, and I love that you called out that you were noticing the inner critic, and then that you were questioning what the inner critic's motive was. And what I found in doing some of Kristen Neff's work.
Oh, I love Kristen Neff.
So wonderful. Is like, is it possible that the inner critic is actually trying to do something helpful? Can I have compassion for this inner critic? And what, and mine is usually trying to help, like stop me from doing something that might get me hurt. And so I have to say like, oh, thank you. That's so very nice of you. You can go sit in the corner. I'm cool now. I'm going to handle this and appreciate your input. Love you. And, and just noticing that, and really appreciating that part of myself that, like you said, it's the part that served me that no longer serves me, but that remnant is still there. Right.
And will be
what was
forever.
Right. And then there was something else I was going to say, because you moved on from the inner critic and now
burnout
and
the
burnout.
pandemic.
So I think, yes, lots of people, you obviously have the great resignation, right? And the great, like, not coming back to work, because I don't know where these people are. We talk about it being like Thanos from Marvel, snapping his fingers and like half the population is gone. I don't know where they went, but they're not.
Yeah, right?
And it's everywhere. It's not just like in certain sectors.
Yeah.
The one thing that I've noticed in my sector, since I'm still also in the law, in addition to coaching, is that, you are on 24/7 because don't you know, you've been working from home, and what are you doing? Laundry? No, you answer your phone. You're there 100% of the time, and on. Everything's a crisis. Everything's an emergency. And you must answer. And it is a recipe for burnout for some folks, right?
Sure.
Like, it's
for everyone.
Yeah. So it's funny. Some people learned, and then the people who like maybe, I'm going to put a should on them, should learn, didn't learn. Or they're so trapped in the story. This is the story. This is how they've all lived, and they don't know how to undo it.
And
Right.
the control too. A lot of like, this is how I control. This is how I feel safe. This is how I can achieve, right? Like this, you know, I
Right.
just like this is the only way. And then you have a whole bunch of people pleasers working for controllers, right? And so the
Oh,
people
it's a
pleasers think,
recipe. Yeah.
oh, I'll just be available all the time, even on my vacation. I won't actually shut down or log off or whatever. Like I'll still like answer this. Oh, just this one email, right? Oh, and then your boss knows that you're available, so then you get another one, and then it's like it's I said to the oncology nurse today that was administering my medicine, is I ended up watching this really kind of sappy and lovely movie on Netflix. It's based on a Jane Austen novel called I just watched it today. What was it? Anyways, it doesn't matter. But I actually watched a movie while I was getting chemo instead of checking emails and text messages and making a post and trying to remember to do a newsletter, because I always forget to do my newsletter and all these things. And I told her, I was like, I'm so proud of myself right now that I'm just watching this sweet, sappy Jane Austen love story, because this is the self-care
Yeah.
that I haven't been doing. That's so I very intentionally did that. I didn't take a pad of paper. I didn't take a to-do list. And it felt so good. And it's those simple things that we can do for ourselves. And maybe it's watching a movie, because you never let yourself watch a movie. Or,
Right.
there's so many different things. Everyone is different. And, as a coach, it's so fun. The client is the expert of their own life. They know what that thing is that's going to just be like that special moment where they know that they're taking better care of themselves than they have before. And that's one of the biggest challenges for me right now, is that I really felt when in March, I submitted my final manuscript to my copy editor on March 4th. And it was March 14th that I had my first mammogram. And 5 days later, I had a diagnosis of breast cancer. And I was just at this like peak of like, oh, things are about to really get going. I'm in a mastermind for creative entrepreneurs this year. I made that investment in myself and my business, knowing that I was going to blow up my business, and I was going to, it's going to make workshops and courses and like do all the things. And I have all of those resources available to me, and I'm in this incredible mastermind. But we every Monday we check in with our group, and all of the women in the group have to report our professional and personal wins for the last week, and then our goals for this week. And I posted, I was like, F goals. I don't have any. I'm done with them for now. I was just like, I'm done for them for the rest of the foreseeable future. I have no goals. I am giving myself permission to just scratch everything. And what I get done, I'll get done. And what falls into my lap will fall into my lap. And what I'll create. But I just can't put that pressure on myself anymore.
Right.
And I think there are a lot of us that don't have cancer that need to stop putting the pressure on ourselves. You know what I mean? It's not, you don't have to get cancer to learn this lesson, people.
Well, and we've talked about that before, in a different conversation, but like, that's what it was. It was like, how do we get to the point where we don't have to have some traumatic thing happen, whether it's a diagnosis or some huge life trauma that happens, for us to remember that we don't have to do all of those things. That number one, love.
Yes.
Number two, love. Number three, love. And oh, by the way, you're part of that. Like,
and you're worthy. And you're worthy of the love, right? Like I think one of the most powerful memories that I have of the time that I was in coaching school, and I was really fortunate. I was trained for an entire year in person, and a lot of coaching programs are online, which is fine, but I got to go for an entire weekend, the first month of every weekend for a year, and be in person with like 6 or 7 trained coaches, some of them master coaches, and then like 20 of us that were in the cohort. And some real magic happened. And I remember this one in particular session where one of the master coaches asked us, those of us who had children, and actually Moxie had just been born. So I had baby Moxie and she was like 2-3 months old. And Denise turns and looks at me and she says, Katie, when Moxie was born, like what more did she need to do or learn or become in order to be worthy of unconditional love for the rest of your life? And I was like, nothing.
Right.
Nothing. And, we just kind of sat with that for a minute, and she just looked out at the room and to all the other parents in the room, and all the parents are like nodding their head and everyone's like, yeah, of course. And then she was like, yeah, we're children too. Like we came into this world and we didn't need to do anything more. We didn't need another education. We didn't need another accolade. We didn't need an accomplishment or a trophy. We didn't need to prove ourselves to anybody. We come into this world pure and whole and worthy of love. And we remain that way always, no matter what happens to us. No matter what happens to us, and no matter what crap we do to other people. Cause like we hurt each other. We don't mean to, but we do. Right. So it's like, you're still worthy. You're still loved. You're still worthy of being loved. You're worthy of loving yourself. And that was another thing that I actually put in the comment of my goals. I was like, I have no goals. And that's not going to change my inherent value or my worth. I just had to say it. It was kind of jokey, but also like reminding myself, like, it is okay, Katie, to not really have the greatest sense of direction in this moment, to feel foggy and distracted, and to just accept that that's your reality, and to surrender to it. And then to go watch a cute, sappy love movie because that's what's going to make you feel cute.
Yeah.
And,
well, and I it's crazy to me, like, I know how we are in our heads. So like seeing you in my mind's eye, like getting chemotherapy, trying to do a freaking newsletter and emails and Instagram posts. And I'm like, what the, know? And and yet you're like, yes, of course, that's what I was doing. Like, why wouldn't I be doing that? And like, seize the moment,
Yes.
Yes. And
totally, like, I free childcare.
right. What? And so I love that about other human beings, and then especially in the coaching relationship, because if we were working together, I would have asked you about that. But
yeah, exactly.
But you came to your own brilliant realization in that moment of like, and you were very intentional of like, no, today I'm going to watch a sappy, love rom-com or whatever, and just be here.
Yeah.
And I love that you got to that. And like you said, no one needs a cancer diagnosis.
No.
Or, a trauma.
No.
To get there. We can make these decisions. I was listening to a podcast the other day, and first I got mad when the speaker said this. Arthur C. Brooks, he's fantastic. He's amazing. He writes for The Atlantic, all this stuff. And, he was just quoting somebody, but he was the messenger. So I wanted to not
punch him.
I wanted to punch him in the face. And he said, love is a decision, not a feeling. And I was like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Like,
I don't know.
Right?
That sounds like arranged marriage. You know what I mean?
I mean, he was saying like we decide to love, right? And so nothing, to your point and to your coach's point from your training program, there's nothing that anyone needs to do other than make a decision about loving. That's it. And then so I think that was his point, not so much that, it's not this profound, amazing.
Right. Because it's a feeling too, right? It's so many things. Yeah.
But I kind of, and then I like came around. So at first I wanted to punch him, and then I was like, no, that's right. That's right. We just decide, we decide to love.
Yeah.
And
well, yeah, if I'm saying it's my purpose, then you're right. It is a decision. Like, because my purpose could also be curiosity or, philanthropy, or who knows what it could be. Right. Like
all these wonderful things. Right.
Right. But for me, it really isn't. And I did actually I have this life purpose exercise that I do with my clients. And most people kind of have an idea of like, oh God, my life purpose. Like, I think it's going to be like this long drawn out, like, like a plan, and I'm like, no, it's an organic process that generally gets distilled down to one word. And it's a beautiful process to go through with my clients. And when I went through it in my coaching program, we did it and we got to do it in person, and we did it in groups, and there were people there witnessing. And the coach, the facilitator that was helping me get to sort of my purpose would give suggestions and kind of see like, is your purpose this? And like, let it resonate and see if it moves you. And when she was like, Katie, is your purpose love? And I closed my eyes and I couldn't talk. I was speechless, and I became overwhelmed with feeling and there was like everything wrapped up in love, which is like everything. I felt everything. I felt the sadness. I felt the joy. I felt the excitement. I felt the anticipation and the fear and everything that gets wrapped up in love. Because I thought, oh my God,
Yeah.
could it really be that?
Yes.
Is that it? Like, wow. Like, it was so profound. And I started crying, and other people from other groups came over that had already finished the exercise. And when I opened my eyes, like the entire cohort was standing around me, and
Beautiful.
everyone was witnessing me step into that realization that, oh my God, my life purpose is love. Oh, it was a good experience.
Yeah, I love that. It is interesting. The other night I was out with my husband. We were kidless for a little bit. Kiddo
Nice.
was at a basketball camp, and so we were out to dinner and we were talking about all the things. And
Yeah.
he said something like he's faced with some indecision, and I was like, whatever decision you make is the right decision because, and I looked in his eyes and I got all teary-eyed and I said, because all that matters is this.
Oh.
And it's the same thing. It's
The
all that
connection.
matters is the connection, the love, and that's for ourselves and for our loved ones and our friends. And, hopefully we can grow that a little, we can learn as a species to grow that a little bit.
Yes. And to realize that, even if my love doesn't directly impact someone, it might inspire that someone to love their community more deeply.
Right. Right.
It's like meta meditation. I know you also teach meditation and everything, but like that, I love that Buddhist meditation, the meta meditation of sending well-being and light and love and healing and positivity out to, myself and then someone close to me, and then someone that I kind of know, but not really. And then someone that drives me nuts, and then my town, and then my city and my state and my world, and then my universe. And like, I did a lot of meta meditation when I was recovering from Poppy's death. And I realized I want to start doing that more and more. And I had this profound experience one day when I was writing, when I realized I was writing about having done that type of meditation that morning. And it dawned on me, I was like, wait a second. Because I think the inner critic, skeptic, whatever, that part of us, that it gets triggered when you're doing that type of meditation, because you think, really, like, am I really praying for every single person in the United States? Like, is that even possible? Like, am I really sending this energy out? And then it dawned on me, and I was like, wait a second. I wasn't the only one today on the planet who did a meta meditation.
That's
and
right.
if I include everyone in the United States, and then everyone in the North America, and then everyone in every continent, every human everywhere, and if I include every single one of those people in my prayers and my meditation, then that means that every single other person who did a meta meditation, who prayed for and loved on every single person that lives in the United States and the world and whatever, I was in that lump.
Mm-hmm.
Little old me was included. And then I was just like, it does work. Like, I felt it. I could feel it. I have chill bumps actually right now in this moment, because I was like, oh my God, like, it's not about anybody actually feeling that feeling. It's about me feeling the feeling of generating that love and that kindness and that well-being, and that, it's tiny and it's huge, and it's universal.
It is so amazing. And, meta meditation, I don't think I would have survived the pandemic without it. And, I would do it sitting, but I'd also, like, sometimes I just had to get the F out, and I would go run. And as I was run, I was like, and then so-and-so, and then, may this person be loved and have security and safety, and this
Yes.
person, okay, this person too, and like,
I know, right?
like really okay, this person too, and it
Yeah.
was so healing because it helped me feel connected to the rest of the world when we were completely isolated and cut off from everybody, and also helps with forgiveness.
It
To be released from
does.
resentment and
Yes.
fear and all of that. It is the antidote for all of it, and is a beautiful practice.
I'm
Uh,
gonna do that before the end of the day.
it's
A little meta.
metta, and for
METTA for anyone out there
I was
who's
gonna
wanting to look
say,
it up.
the English lit in me and the lawyer in me is like, we need to say how to spell it, otherwise
Yes,
people will be like,
we
meta,
do.
like
Not
Facebook?
Facebook,
No, not Facebook.
Thank God they didn't spell it with 2 T's.
Oh yeah.
All the peaceful Buddhists out there would have been like, no, you're not allowed to steal this from us.
So true. Well,
I love Facebook and I'm thankful for Facebook.
Right, because we don't want to get booted off of Facebook.
Yeah.
So really don't want to be in Facebook jail. I'm not sure how that happens, but I've seen lots of people get into Facebook jail. I don't want to find out.
If it's when you spam it's when you spam a bunch of people. They don't like that. When you send like too many copy paste messages in a certain amount of time, they perceive you as like a robot spamming. And so they put you in jail.
Well, makes sense, I guess.
Yeah, it does.
I wish they would do more, but whatever.
Right.
That's a story for another day.
Right.
Well, as we're sort of winding things up, obviously we talked a bit about your experience writing Still Breathing, and that you are writing this new memoir, which we cannot wait to read.
Thanks, Melissa.
And this experience of, gosh, the sort of, like you said, the peak of publishing this book, and then the sort of crazy, ironic, catastrophic news of your cancer and like your experience, and yet still
here. Yeah, still here.
Yeah.
Still living, and still, again, yeah, still growing and understanding and connecting, and it's interesting too, because for whatever it's worth, the pregnancy loss platform that I was obviously ready to stand on and do stand on, it was interesting because like it is in some ways, it's my past. It's my past. And I can feel, I am with every mommy who's ever suffered a miscarriage or stillbirth or ectopic pregnancies. I mean, the whole abortion thing right now. I mean, all of it, like, it's just infertility, just the list goes on and on. I'm a woman, right? Like, I get it, and all the women who've had babies after loss, because I went through that, and all the mommies who've tried and still haven't, it just goes on, but it is my past. And so what's so interesting, I think, for me about now having cancer is that cancer is my present. Like, this is now, right? So like, it's the universe's very strange, convoluted way of giving me something else to work with. And I'm going with it. I am going with it, and I am embracing it, and I am being very honest about how hard it is. And it is actually something that I am recently realizing how hard it is. Cause I think for the first couple months, like, I mean, there was a ton of fear and like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this. But there was so much busyness of diagnostics and getting my port put in and all the consults and the that it almost I literally was in survival mode, like where I just had to like, where am I supposed to be today? Oh God, Eli, I have another doctor's appointment. Like I got it, like, and then chemo started and it was like, I don't know about these symptoms. Like it was just, and now 4+ months in, it's all kind of coming to a head, and I'm like, I'm tired.
Yeah.
I'm just tired. Like I didn't know that this is what my summer was going to look like. I didn't know that I was going to be dealing with all this. I had other ideas, and it really is recalibrating my own, what I am capable of, but also I think truly being an example to others that when when you have to slow down, it is okay. And the world will keep spinning and things will keep happening. And, if you have to leave a job for a little while, I promise you something else will come together. And, eventually money is like water. It flows, it will come, it will go, it will come, it will go. You'll think it's coming. It won't, you have to it's just, there's so many different things. And then it will. And so, I mean, a lot of people's biggest fears are like, how will I support myself? Or how will I, like, how can I afford, quote unquote, to change jobs, to change careers, to transition? And I think as a coach, the better question is, how can you afford not to?
100%. How can you afford not to?
How can you afford not to? Because what's, I mean, the alternative is like you push through until and it's weird because I don't want to be like, I have cancer because I chose this and that. It's so weird because it could just be like some freak genetic mutation. I think my trauma has a lot to do with it. I don't know any of the science behind it. I believe that my trauma has something to do with it, and not just the Poppy dying, but other traumas I've had as well. And I'd love to learn more about that. But a lot of people who've had sort of fairly decent, easy-go-lucky lives all of a sudden find out they have cancer. So it doesn't take trauma. It doesn't require some massive series of catastrophic events for you to then also get cancer, which is sort of what I feel like I've been through. But, so if you're out there and you're pondering, how could I afford to change, or how could I afford to do something else? Or I spent so much money on school. How could I afford to not do the thing that I spent the money to go on? Just, encourage you to find a supportive coach like Melissa, and, find someone that you connect with, that resonates with you, that's been in similar situations, and start asking yourself those really big questions and get really big, beautiful answers out of those things.
Love that. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
It's been so great to have you, and I can't wait to have you again. I just know I'm going to have you again on the podcast if you'll be so.
I would love to. Are you kidding? I'm like, it's 7:17. I've got like my family's upstairs, and I could keep talking to you forever. I could just yes. So absolutely. I love to come back on.
Good, because I know we have so many things that we could talk about and want to talk about, and that are worth talking about, and people are going to want to hear about. So thank you so much. And how do people find you? I'll put it in the show notes, but
yeah, please do. Yeah. So my full name is Katie Joy Duke, and I also have that website. So katiejoyduke.com. You can find out about my book, my coaching practice. I'm hoping to eventually branch out into more public speaking, but right now podcasts are really great because I can do them from the comfort of my own home. And then my book, you can also find links to my book. You can buy my book on Amazon. You can buy my book on Barnes & Noble if you're not an Amazonian, because I know not everyone wants to shop there. It's in paperback and ebook, and I am very excited. I'm recording an audiobook of Still Breathing this fall, which will probably be out next spring. So, it'll be a little while, but eventually you'll be able to listen while you're not driving your car, because you might have to pull over and cry for a little while.
I would guess that would be the experience. Or, I had one of these experiences, and I'll let you go, where I was having a day, and you'll love this because, I was having a day, and I decided, like you, to take care of myself. So I went for a run in the woods.
Oh, nice.
And as I'm running in the woods, and I have my headphones on, and I don't even remember what stupid 80s song came on, but it was like the stupid 80s
something.
Song. And I just snotty started I'm trying to run, and I'm sobbing, and, and all the things.
I love it.
On the way back, Sinead O'Connor was on. It must've been an 80s theme.
Yeah.
And, I was like, yeah, the Emperor's New Clothes. That's right. And then I came back, and my car was parked across from another car, and I have enough mindfulness awareness to notice these things. And the license plate for the car was, May the 4th be with you. All in abbreviations, and wow. I was like, yes.
Yes.
So, may the force be with you.
Yes,
and my Catholic upbringing would say, and also with you.
And also with you. I love it. And also with you, Melissa.
And thank you so much for taking the time away from your beautiful family
Oh
and your
gosh,
day
yes. This
and
is
all of that.
wonderful.
So,
This was very filling of my cup. I
and
feel,
mine too.
yeah, thank you so much.
Thank
Yeah.
you. And we'll see you soon.
Okay.
Hey, everybody, it's Melissa, and I'm wondering if you all can relate. Have you ever caught yourself procrastinating or maybe doubting your abilities, or maybe you have a black belt inner critic like I do or have had that wants to sabotage your every move with judgment and perfectionism expectations? It might keep you stuck, it might keep you anxious and away from your full potential. The Positive Intelligence Program, PQ, is a powerful 6-week journey designed to help you quiet those saboteurs, embrace positivity, and find flow in your life. Through daily practices and weekly focuses, we'll work together to build your mental fitness. The PQ app will guide you every step of the way and support you, and you'll be supported either by myself in a one-on-one or in a small group of like-minded individuals where you can share insights and progress. So reach out, contact me at info@thefullymindful.com to find out how we can work together one-on-one or in a small group today.